Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of the PodStation by TrophiesonPSN. And now with Dante Zero, who's going to sing our new theme song, our new intro theme song. Go, go ahead, Dante.
You caught me off guard there again.
What?
We don't have a theme song yet. We're
I
still
thought you were
waiting
going to
for
have an
people.
intro theme song and then an outer, an exit theme song.
No, sadly not. We're still,
You
mind you,
were...
actually, I'm glad you brought that up because we're still waiting for people to submit new tunes to us for that.
I've had a few tunes submitted, believe it or not.
I thought we were going to test them out.
I tried that one. I got some other ones I wasn't too... They were like, eh. That first one was pretty good, but...
Yeah.
Man.
Maybe we should do like a month of where... Well, how many have you got?
Just 3 or 4.
So if we say 4, if we test one out every week for a month and then get people to vote on what the best ones were,
Yeah,
could be something good to do.
maybe.
Yeah.
Get some people to try some stuff, find some free tunes if nothing else.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, hello, I'm Dante Zero. And I'm here
Kryptonite Dragon here. I'm the one that totally caught Dante Zero off guard. I was just
usual.
messing with you a little bit.
Psych.
Psych. So anyway,
Site news.
site news. So happy to announce we have some new additions with the programming staff, namely Paul. Paul is, for the lack of a better term, an expert programmer and deals a lot with corporate website development. And I'm very excited to have him on the team because Paul has a bigger picture. Every time we talk, it's not just, what do you need me to fix? It also comes with the larger scope of things, like this is what we can do to increase SEO. What do you think about this? These kind of things. It's really refreshing to actually have somebody with his skill sets. So I'm really excited. Dante, this guy's, he's really, really good.
Yeah, I've seen some of his stuff on the forums already, and I'm just, I'm excited as well. I think it's good that we have someone that's proactive as well. Not just, as you say, going with what can we fix, but also, it's what can we fix, what can we do to improve, bring me your ideas and we can expand upon it. And I like proactive people like that.
Yeah. I like the idea of
yeah.
not having to fire people for being lazy or not knowing what they're doing. Yeah. And they're certainly out there. The world we live in, a lot of people claim they can do this and that and the other thing, and then when it comes down to it, they can't.
Yeah. Proof is in the pudding, isn't it?
Yep. I'd rather see somebody that, comes in and just starts working on it. Yeah. This needs work. Hey, the code here could use some updating, and what do you think about moving this over here? It's better, and hey, this runs too slow because it's got all this stuff in there that we can trim and streamline, and bigger picture stuff. And I'm happy to announce that we have that. And both Paul and Nathan are both doing a very good job. Nathan's working very hard on your revamp, the news homepage stuff. It's actually coming along very, very awesome. I just took a look at it last night and sent him a compliment because it looks so good. He's just got a whole bunch of stuff in there that's, it's still got a little bit of work, tweaking. But looking really good, man. You're going to like it. We're all going to like it.
Can't
It's going to be
wait.
great.
New front page, woohoo!
Woohoo! You'll have a theme song for ready for the site re-grand opening with the front page. No?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm sure I can find some sort of cheesy 80s song that would match it. Mind you, I could always tap GTA Man up, but I've got a funny feeling it'd just be all hardcore rock.
GTA song.
If you're going to make an impact, make it loud.
Okay.
Any other site news?
No. You got anything?
No.
Anything stand out?
Not anything I can think of, but besides, with the exception of obviously Paul coming on board and having the program, and we kind of knew about it. I kind of knew about it a little bit before it became official, but the fact that it's now out there, and it's now people are aware of it. I'm just hoping that people will get on board and get behind it now. Um, I think it's important for all of us as staff and members that we do have to take a proactive approach, because we can sit and complain till the cows come home, but at the end of the day, I have no problem with people complaining about stuff if they have legitimate concerns. That's fine, but you also have to ask yourself, what can I do to help push that forward? What can I do to solve the problem? And because I don't want us to sort of say, well, great that we've had Paul, let's put all our eggs in one basket. Paul coming into the team, and everything that we do is going to be great, but we still need to kick on as individuals and staff and members as well. So it's great that Paul's coming with us on this journey, I guess is what we call it, but hopefully that will help people sort of evaluate their positions and really get people going with it all as well.
Right, it's one piece of the puzzle. We can't do it without all of us. And I'm going to take this opportunity now, just to say something that kind of hit me. I think when I was speaking with you, I want to apologize for not doing the SEO sooner, trying to advertise us, get more members. I think I really kind of dropped the ball a little bit there, where I was focused on build it, adding new things, implementing things, improving things. It started mainly with the forums and the controls with the forums, and then it moved to some of the other additions and add-ons and things. And it's been a rough road. Obviously we lost our first programmer when he got in a head-on car accident. And, those things have, it shook us up for a while there. It's the reason we've had to go from programmer to try to refit with someone with all the things that we needed. And I think we've landed on something better than we've ever had. Pretty certain of that. But along the way, it's been a rough road, and I think that there was an impression of us having a lot more members at this point. And I take full responsibility for that, as the one that should have kind of tripped the SEO system a little sooner, should have advertised. We've done really awesome considering it's been word of mouth, but at the same time, everyone's like, well, I'd rather have, thousands of people looking at my guide than a dozen. And, I've been okay with that. So shame on me. And we're definitely changing things.
But live and learn. It is important to put it in context that while that was a mistake, at the same time, we still have to look at the fact that effectively the doors have only been open for just over a year now. And, as you say, there's been rough patches throughout that year. But where we are now...
Realistically, we've come a pretty damn long way, too. The other thing to look at is we are continuing to move forward. The other thing I've been bad about sometimes is sharing, and people are like, well, everything looks the same, but it really hasn't. There's a lot of things in the background making the site faster. We've upgraded, we've done stuff like that with code. That's why some of the things have changed, and we do get the complaints when the forums suddenly go bold and things like that. But it's because we've been adding add-ons and things in the background and trying to get some of the processes working a little bit better for everyone. And then the other thing you got to understand is I don't always share, because the other thing is it trips a lot of questions sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm open.
You might not have answers for.
Yeah, obviously I'm open to getting people's opinions and things, but it's like with Paul being hired on here. The last thing I want is, I haven't introduced him to the public yet. The last thing we want is like an influx of people saying, hey, can you do this for me? Or, hey, I've got a little problem with that. Because even as an administrator, I experience that. And I don't want to suscept someone to, like, they're going to be working real hard on some application, and then someone's like got this little minor problem and it hasn't been through that filter yet. Yeah. Because everyone's usually, what happens is their problem is the biggest problem. Hey, I'm having some little problem with this, and it more times than not, it could be a browser issue. It could be something that's specific only to them. No one else is experiencing it. And that doesn't say, Paul, drop what you're doing and handle, so-and-so's browser issue. we got to be less selfish than that. We got to look big picture, and we got to say, okay, this is a priority over this, and so we drop all those other things because if we take them all up, they'll continue. It's a never-ending stream. The time you finish that one, someone else will have a little issue. Oh, you fixed his little issue. Fix mine.
Yeah.
And
instead of rebuilding the dam, you just plug in holes.
Right. Yeah. Let's go up river a little bit. Let's build a completely new state-of-the-art dam.
Yeah.
Let's fix everything. Put the bells and whistles up and stuff like that, and implement them. And then we'll troubleshoot those specifically, and then we'll move on to the next big project overall. So I've been doing a lot too to try and take up the slack on some of the things with the database and things that I can control programming-wise, handling the little things that directly involve one person or two people's specific issues. And then if I can't, then I add them to the list to be handled in kind of an order. I plug them in based on priority.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at with it. Got to be patient. We're getting there. We're about ready to break out some really great stuff. Front pages are coming along.
Moral of the story is, yes, mistakes have been made, but in all fairness, everyone's learned, and we all need to now move forward.
Yeah.
As a group.
So Paul's working real hard on database stuff. Nathan's working real hard on the front page stuff. So go blow your mind.
So I think that pretty much covers it for site news.
Yes.
Otherwise we'll end up getting too apologetic. We don't want that.
Too late.
Let's move forward. PSN pick of the week.
I got no one I can blame at the top. What do I do?
Yeah.
It's Dante's fault.
Yeah.
He was supposed to have a tune.
I've got broad shoulders. I can live with it. Wait. PSN pick of the week. I have a cracker. You remember last week we forgot to...
You say you have a cracker?
I forgot the name of it.
Did you say you have a cracker?
A cracker, yeah.
A cracker. Okay.
Cracker of a game, yeah. It's called Voodoo Chronicles, the first sign. It's produced by a small company called Sanuk Games. It released on Wednesday. It's a modest price of £4, which I think is about $6 or $7, if that.
Six.
And
I'm learning to calculate.
Yeah.
Should be about $6.
About $6, something like that. It was probably a little bit less, if I'm honest. I don't know. I haven't checked it on the US store, but I know this is a game that came out in Europe. It's actually a pretty good PSN game. It's one of my genres that are kind of a guilty pleasure, which is point-and-click puzzle games. I do like my point-and-click adventures, and this is a cross between a point-and-click, a puzzle game, and a hidden object game. So it has everything that I love about that type of genre. It last year a good 7 hours playing through it, and it is fairly interesting. You take on the role of a detective called James Voodoo, and you kind of have to solve this mystery, which then takes you to different locales, and you have to do hidden objects and solve puzzles to then progress further through the game. And the thing I like about it is the puzzles are varied enough. They don't seem too repetitive. If anything, it's quite nicely balanced between puzzles, hidden object games, and the point and click aspect of it. So, it's a pretty fun game. 7 hours worth of gameplay for £4 is a pretty good bargain. And I imagine it's when I say it's got replayability, I wouldn't imagine you play through it for 7 hours and then want to do it again, but it does have replayability in the fact that if you play it all the way through and then about 6 months later you're kind of looking for something different to play again, then you could quite easily go back through the game and still enjoy it.
Cool.
So yeah, Voodoo Chronicles is a great game. I played it myself all the way through. I know a few other people that have played it and finished it, and said they enjoyed it as well. So I would highly recommend it. It's budget price. It was originally a PC game as well. That's been ported across. I'm kind of surprised there isn't a PS Vita version. Having played through it, it seems suited to the kind of controls that you get on the Vita with the touchscreen and the rear touchpad. I really do want to see more of these games coming to PSN. We've seen some interesting PC ports announced this week, with things like Farm Simulator 2013 and stuff, and it sets a good precedent, because we talk about PS4 being easy to program for, because of its new PC architecture, and it seems that PC games makers have actually now started to cotton on the PS3 isn't actually that hard for them to port stuff across.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're kind of jumping the gun on our topic today.
Yeah, but I just wanted to point it out because, I mean, I often hear complaints, it's so difficult to sell architecture, this, that, and the other. And, the fact that someone like Sanuk Games, who are a fairly small developer, have been able to port this across and, redo the screens so that they're presenting them full 1080p native, which, for point and click and hidden object games is quite important, the actual look of the game itself. Yeah. So the fact that they've managed to do that, and with relatively ease as well, it's a great precedent to set that, even though, we have a new console launching later on this year, that, PC games makers who are, I guess, classed as small publishers or small developers are finding new homes on the PS3, which will probably ensure that, the PS3 will keep running through its 10-year life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a good place to be with that, I think. And, something like Voodoo Chronicles is a great way to kick that off. And, I've said in my weekly news update this week that it's important to remember that while April is relatively quiet, there are going to be a lot of indie games coming out over the next month or two, and some serious indie game announcements. So, this is the time to sort of really take an interest in it, really.
Okay. I'll hold off a second. This week's topic, a little bit related to what you were saying. It actually spurring some questions in my mind. So, Voodoo Chronicles, look into it. Yep. Sounds like a cool game.
It'll definitely keep you occupied for a good number of hours.
And let's move on to this week's topic, because it's bound to be one very involved and a lot to talk about. So basically, this week, let's talk about the PS4 future applications and implications. And basically, what that means is the PS4 is, and you just reminded me some of the big things, for lack of a better term, is kind of completely changing the structure of things. Namely, we have some things with the camera, we have some new things with Facebook integration, video integration, we have lots of things with, with the development applications, and all these things have a lot of implications throughout everything that we do with the PlayStation. So let's talk about that. And the first thing that came to mind, has Sony actually talked about the 10-year cycle on this next one?
I don't think they have, actually. I don't think they've mentioned anything about the life cycle of the PS4. I imagine we probably hear a bit more of the marketing spiel towards sort of E3 time. But yeah, it is kind of odd that they haven't mentioned anything about what their aim is for its life cycle. And I wonder if they're a bit cautious about that. Mm-hmm. Because, when PS3 first launched, I mean, it was a year behind the Xbox 360, but even at that time, I think Microsoft knew that Sony had a behemoth in terms of the technology that was included in the machine, and that Sony would be able to support it with 10-year life cycle. And so, in that respect, Sony were quite happy to nail that to the wall, sort of make it a definite thing. I do wonder if, with the new console coming out, that Sony are not too eager to do that this time round.
Yeah.
Because they want a bit of flexibility with it, because now it's a case of, well, we've committed to a 10-year life cycle, we're 6 years into it, everybody's getting tired, complaining, this, that and the other, and, do we really want that when we launch another console?
Mm-hmm. Well,
So
you've seen
it's interesting they haven't committed to that.
Throughout various consoles history, you've seen different bursts in technology and then stagnant periods, and you've had kind of the bottom fall out. In like the early 80s, we had that with like too much going on with the gaming and the things that they were trying. We've had, I don't know. I mean, we've had tremendous growth in PCs, and I don't know if people have really realized it compared to like when I was younger. A new PC might come out in a year or two, and it's got a little bit more power and things like that. But we seem to be doubling our power and doubling our storage capabilities and all these innovations every year.
Which kind of makes
it
this
difficult to say 10-year cycle.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes this generation a bit of a fluke, really. Because, if you look back over the previous generations, we haven't gone 7 years without a new console.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what kind of makes this, makes me realise that's probably why Sony haven't committed to it. Because, as I say, once you sort of put it out there that you're going to commit to a 10-year life cycle, you kind of have to do it. That you've got no choice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's going to put people off purchasing your new products because
is it because if you don't mention it, it's not like I don't think people are going to go out there and go, well, this doesn't have a 10-year life cycle. I'm not buying that.
Yeah. But I don't know. At the same
Sony's
time,
set a pretty good track record so far, I think, to give people the impression that, I certainly believe that they'll support it for a very long time.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the quality of games that are coming out on PS3, this year, and there's still a number of first-party studios working on unannounced PS3 projects, and obviously Square Enix with things like Final Fantasy 14, I can quite easily see it running at least another 2 years worth of AAA games easily.
Mm-hmm. And backwards compatibility, that's another thing. I mean, that's almost like a guarantee of their attempt at future support because like you say, if the PS3 it still has life in it, you get backwards compatibility and stuff in there. Even reaching back to the PS1, that just it shows that they're supporting even the developers that would still be doing things on the PS3 are going to be like, well, look at that, it's still available.
Backwards compatibility is still a moot point for PS4, although I know a lot of people are, at the moment it's kind of a make or break seller. But I think, it's a bit too early to be sort of stamping your colours to the wall and saying, well, if it's not got backwards compatibility, I'm not going to buy it, because we don't know how Sony's going to address that. All we know is that Gaikai has the potential to stream PS1, PS2 and PS3 games across its network. We don't know if we're going to have to pay a fee for that privilege, or whether it'll be instead of paying a fee for the streaming, you just pay for the individual game and you're able to access it on numerous different platforms and so on. So, to those people that sort of, very much against it because their digital library could effectively be null and void, I would say this is that at the end of the day, nobody's forcing you to go out and buy a new piece of hardware, and unless you're sort of going to trade your PS3 in towards the cost of a PS4, is it the end of the world if you have to have two devices connected up to your telly? You know what I'm saying? Your digital library is not going to be null and void. You will have access to it in some way, shape or form. It's just at the moment we don't really know how that's going to take shape on the new console, but that still doesn't stop you accessing it on your PS3.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a fair point to make, because the other thing to bear in mind is that Gaikai is still relatively new for Sony. Yeah. It was only purchased last year, and so while they've come out and made bold promises, there's no guarantee that that's going to be nailed down for launch day. It'd be nice if it was, but it may not be applicable straight away. And that could have a negative impact. But then on the flip side, I mean, Sony demonstrated the PS Vita originally running PS1 classics. Now, it wasn't available on launch, but 6 months later it was, and everybody's happy about it. It's now not even really considered an issue that it was at the time. It's amazing how people quickly forget things like that, isn't it?
Well, it's one of those things. It's like when you're invested in something, and then down the road you know that it's the same with buying a game and having a server shut down. Effectively, you have like a time life or a lifespan, as it were, on your game, and so people are always in the back of their head. That's always a concern, because it's like the transition is everything. When you start transitioning, and like I can remember getting the PS3 and thinking, damn, I want all these PS2 games, and I had backwards compatibility. Originally, I had the PS3s that were backwards compatible, and then suddenly they were coming out with ones that weren't, and if you were going to send it in to be repaired or whatever. So it's like you basically had a console that when it died, okay, now you got to get rid of your 60 gigabyte backwards compatible and buy this other one. And there's like all these questions in your head of like, well, what about all my PS2 discs sitting there? Do I go buy another PS2? Those kind of things. And it takes a while to get comfortable with the idea of like, well, I'm leaving those behind. I'm moving on. I'm on the next gen console. I'm playing those games. Those are going to take up all my time.
Maybe it's just me. Maybe I have a loyalty issue.
Well, how many games do you have on your shelf? Let me ask you that.
About 110.
And do you actually go back and play a majority of them?
Yeah, probably.
So you would be probably one of the few that would do that, because I bet if we'd ask people that have hundreds of discs in their collection, they probably don't touch them, or they grab one out maybe once a year or something like that, and they go back and they play it. And I thought the same kind of thing with buying and selling games. It's like they just sit. They don't, And it's I'm talking about games I loved. Captain America, for example. I thought that was a great game. Sat on my shelf. I'm like, well, I don't want to get rid of that. I might want to go back and play it. And lo and behold, I sold it, and I'm realizing now I don't miss it. I would have not put the thing back in. I got my trophies. I moved on. Where's Captain America 2? It's kind of we have a thing in our mind where we want to be connected to that past gaming experience, and I think sometimes that's bad, because it leaves expectations that are not really fair.
Yeah.
When you switch consoles.
And I think, to Sony's credit, they weather a lot of the bad storm with regards to that, because, from Sony's perspective, they're well aware that that's the case. But they don't really go out of their way to defend it, because they know eventually people will, just like yourself, come to the realization themselves, but they're willing to sort of, take the bad press and the anger and stuff with regards to that, and just sort of weather through it.
Yeah.
Because they know eventually people will just, make that transition straight across. I mean, I'm with you in some respect that, when I got my first PS3, it was backwards compatible. Then I started buying PS3 games quite regularly, and I got to the stage where the very few PS2 games I had left I just didn't care about. I actually care more about the classics now that they're being remastered and shown in a more glorious form that they should have been able
capitalizing
to
on
days, yeah.
And again, Sony capitalizing there on a person's memories about that game, because here's the thing: a lot of that stuff is just a pretty fresh coat of paint. It's not new content or anything like that. You're like, oh, and I don't remember this being that awesome. And after a while, you realize, well, it's the same old game. It just looks a little prettier.
But in fairness, they have gone about in the right approach in terms that they're not over expensive,
Right. Yeah.
And you do get more for your money than you perhaps did when you played it first.
Oh, absolutely. Round. So,
yeah. Fair play to them for doing that. And in fairness, that wasn't originally Sony's idea in some respect. because a lot of people did ask for HD remakes well before the first one, which I think was Sly Cooper, was even announced at E3. And when that did announce, people then started putting forward all the suggestions and ideas for more HD classics.
Yeah, open the floodgates.
Exactly,
and
that was something that the whole PlayStation community did more so than Sony, and developers had sort of cottoned onto it now and sort of releasing them regularly, and they're fairly budget, so I personally don't see a problem. I know there's going to be a few people that probably disagree with that, but the great experiences. I do wonder though whether or not we will see anything like that on PS4 though. Because there's an important thing to remember here. I mean, I've watched all the trailers and videos in full 1080p, and the graphics on a lot of the games and the photorealism look fantastic. There's no doubt that they will really utilise the full 1080p 60 frames per second images. The problem it has is that it's not quite that graphical step up as we had from PS2 to PS3.
Yeah.
And so I think people are slightly more hesitant with that. So it'd be interesting to see if they start doing things like PS3 classics on PS4 in a couple of years after the PS4's launch, because I couldn't see.
So like Uncharted digitally remastered on PS4. You'd be like, what?
I couldn't see them doing something like that, but because as I say, if you sat down and say, I mean, at this moment in time, it's hard to do a comparison because there isn't a version running on PS4, but it'd be hard. I'd love to see a comparison of, say, an Uncharted. Say we'll pick Uncharted 2, for example, because that's probably the best graphically out of the three of them, and running on PS3 and then run it on a PS4. And see how much it improves the graphics wise.
Super
It'd
HD.
be interesting. But we wanted to talk about the applications and stuff because one of the reasons I agreed to sort of speak to this about this topic is because you raised a very interesting point when you said about things like PlayStation Home and stuff, which we'll come to in a minute. But if you look at the cross-media bar as it is now, you've got all your categories broken down. And within those, you've obviously got certain things like in your TV side of things, you've got all your TV apps. In your games, you've got your game apps. Now, we've seen a lot of pictures regarding the PS4's UI. But one thing I haven't seen is any of that easy access defining applications. So, for example, we'll be able to use Netflix on PS4. I imagine we will be. I can't see Netflix not doing that.
No.
But I'm trying to sort of picture in my mind, why would you use Netflix on PS? What if you bring Netflix from, say, PS3 onto PS4, what is Netflix going to offer to make that a better experience on the next gen console? And it's the same with numerous other apps as well. I'm scratching my head now thinking, well, what more can they do to do it? I mean, we obviously know 4K is coming, and we know the PS4 will support 4K streaming video as well as 4K discs. But other than that, I mean, given the nature of the increased functionality of the PS4, can you yourself think of any sort of way they can increase the value of apps on the PlayStation 4?
Yes. Mainly this is something, and I know it sounds a little crazy, but I've been thinking about how if you actually look at some of these things with the PS3, how complicated they actually are to use. The reality is that they didn't implement a lot of that stuff very well at all. A lot of it was added on the back end after the PS3 has already been out to the market, and what's happened from that is it's like variety of controls don't overlap. They don't allow you to do things while you're within other applications. And I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest things they can do is make it open so that you can tweak other things and settings and play with other stuff while you're in other items.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is, like, nothing annoys me more than, like, I was talking to you earlier about some of the Skyrim settings and everything like that, where I went into safe mode to get my PS3 running a little faster, and I lost my video settings.
Yeah.
And loaded up Skyrim and everything like that, and had an HD TV with, I had the standard screen view going, and I selected some options and everything that had been deleted or whatnot, and it appeared to be correct on the menu on the PS3. I launched Skyrim, I go into my game, that whole thing, start playing, and then as soon as I start seeing text on there, I noticed that it's more elongated. Like I had I don't know if I picked like 16:9 view ratio or something instead of what it was supposed to be. But it was making me kind of visually, it was making me a little bit kind of like seasick looking at it. And I was like, this does not look right. And, I got to thinking, pushing my PS button in the middle of the controller and fixing that setting while I was in the game, and realized, well, it's going to say you got to shut down this application, you got to do this and that. And then it's like, do over, start over.
Yeah.
Go back into
'Cause
safe mode, check everything out, make sure the settings are correct and everything, leave your game, spend lots of extra time tweaking that to see if it's right, and then if it's not, then I got to leave again and come back in. And it dawned on me that that's some of the biggest things. It's like things do not work well with others, and you need it to be seamless.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I have the same problem with things like Netflix, where, if you've been watching Netflix for a couple of hours and like you stick a movie on and you start to feel tired, you have to then back out of Netflix to go into the power save management tools to then, to tell it to switch off in an hour and then load up Netflix again. And that's quite annoying, really, because if you think you're going to fall asleep.
Give us features.
So I'm hoping they'll do stuff like that with the app things, but I'm just more curious about certain things. Like for example the web browser. If I'm playing, say, a game, am I going to be able to bring up the web browser in the middle of the game itself? And for example, why not have the ability to bring up the web browser in the middle of the game? And say you're doing collectibles and access a rich guide.
Trophy guide.
Exactly.
Minimize that. Go right back to the game. I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah. See all of that. Awesome.
Those are the kinds of things I'd like to see with the implementation with regards to applications. But what I'd really like to see? I'd like to see more applications. I know that in the US you guys have a lot of TV video applications, and certainly quite a few that we don't get here in Europe, and it's the same with Japan. There you get a lot of applications that neither the North American or European region get. And then,
what kind of applications would you want to see? Give me an example.
Well, for example, Nico, which is a streaming app. You can get it on the PSV, the PS Vita in Japan and in America, and it allows you to record and live stream content, but at the same time you can put text over it. And so, for example, if you wanted to have a real, like on YouTube videos, you have text, you can have it scrolling across the video and things like that. You have to do that in post-editing. With Nico, you can do that on the fly, and you can actually have real-time conversations with people in that as well. Nico is an extremely interesting take on live streaming services, yet we don't have access to it here in Europe. And it's not just things like Nico, but I'd love to see more apps. In fact, I would actually like to see some variation of Android that was PlayStation specific. So, for example, on an Android phone, you can get a official PlayStation blog app, which when you click on it, it takes you to the PlayStation blog and brings up all the blog posts, and you can comment on it and stuff when it works. I would like to see those kinds of things implemented in PlayStation 4 and some kind of proper app store.
Well, maybe it's time to start thinking about some of the controls that you have on phones. Not unlike the iPhone with the voice activation and asking it questions. It'd be nice to have that kind of stuff.
Siri doesn't really work.
I know it doesn't, but it would be
doesn't
nice if
work
you had basic
yeah.
controls, like you could say pause and things and pause your game and that kind of stuff. Because think about how many times where you got something going on and you got your hands full multitasking, or I still just the ability to have your game be interrupted by other controls and other, to answer a message. Look how complicated it is now to talk on chat room text. Like, oh my gosh. It's like a chore.
Press the XMB button, scroll up to chat room things.
Yeah, over to that, wait for it to load up, read that, scroll up with the messages. You can only type so much, with your thumbs on picking the letters out of the on-screen keyboard.
And yeah, even
and
if
then
you
go back to your game and you're dead because it doesn't pause and
yeah, it only pauses for some games, which can be quite frustrating because you never know which game's going to actually pause it when you exit when you bring up the cross media bar. Yeah. So some will just carry on, others.
Yeah, some you got to pause and then go into the cross media bar, or it messes it up.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you've had this. I've had it where I can't my cross media bar just will not disappear for a while.
Oh God, yeah.
And you're like in Call of Duty or something, and you're in online multiplayer, and you're hiding in a corner, and you're just watching that guy walk up to you. You're like, hey, what this guy's just standing there. I think I'll dance around him and.
Then even if you're not playing online multiplayer, some games where it just takes forever to load up the cross media.
And you can't place a higher value on your time than that, because people do not like to wait. I keep getting reminded about 50 quid in Skyrim and the load screens. The game is awesome. He hates the game because of those kind of issues, and it's the same kind of thing with the PS3 with all the stuff that was promised, like in-game music, cross-game chat, those kind of things. If you can just do those seamlessly, they happen seamlessly.
Well, we know, I'm not quite sure how the music side of things work, but we know cross-game chat is coming on PS4, so that's a good thing. I don't know. I'm kind of a little bit envious of Microsoft 360 owners in some respect, because you press the Xbox button, you've got your standard menu, but you can cycle through blades and stuff while still in game, and that I'm kind of glad that Sony have cottoned on to that and sort of said, right, well, we need to with this new one, we need to make sure that things are seamless. Mm-hmm. And well, I mean, this thing's got 8 gig of GDDR RAM, so it should be easily doable with all these kinds of things. Yeah, being able to access apps and message people
while still in game, without exiting anything, without waiting for a long period of time. And picture. I know it sounds weird, but we're moving towards that whole, Star Trek thing of, computer.
Yeah. Well,
PS3, or I should say PS4. PS4, pause game, contact Dante Zero, send message as follows, blah, 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 And
well, we do want to talk about that, and we'll come on to that in a second, so I just want to finish up in terms of the application side of things. I think the other thing as well, and this doesn't just apply to games, this really does apply to applications, is there's nothing worse than, say for example, you've been working 12-hour day. I'm not saying I do, but somebody comes home from a 12-hour day, wants to fire up Netflix. Netflix has put a new update for their application out.
Oh, yeah.
You have to sit there and wait for the application to update and then be able to access video content. Now, if you've had a long day and you see that patch thing come up, you're just going to knock it off and stick the telly on. And I can kind of understand and sympathise. And, one of the exciting features with PS4 is the ability for all this to take place in the background. So you can still keep using stuff without all that crap of patching. Because it's probably the downfall of this generation is the constant patching of everything. I think we all accept that things need to be patched and fixed with games. We're all sort of, we're not stupid enough to say that it's a bad thing, but at the same time, we all also recognise that it interferes so much. It's so frustrating because we've had this conversation about it before, where we've been like, you buy a new game, the first thing you do is you stick it in, you fire it up, you get all dead excited, and then it goes, oh yeah, we've got a patch to download, and obviously depending on how fast your internet is, that can take potentially hours. Schools have problems with Defiance when he's recently got that. I had a similar problem with DC Universe when I first bought that on disc. That wanted 18 gigs downloaded from their server, even though a majority of the assets were on the disc. So not only did I have to do an initial patch to fire the disc up, but then when the disc was up, I then had to download more patches. And it was a good 2.5 days after buying the game that I was actually able to play it.
Yeah. Well, it's the same when you buy the digital downloads. It's like if you don't keep them on your hard drive, oh boy.
You have to sit there waiting for it to download, and then you download it, and again...
Like, I'll play it again in a couple of days with you guys. I gotta let it download overnight and then do the patches and everything. Because it won't automatically do them. It'll load the game up, and then you gotta, just as you said, you gotta go find those.
Yeah. And the worst thing is that digital titles aren't exempt from being patched as well. So, if you downloaded, I don't know, let's pick a title out of the thin air. Let's say Dead Nation. The game's about 3 gigs big. So you downloaded 2-3 gigs, and you think, yeah, I can finally go play some co-op with my buddies. And then it's like patch 1.4, which is another 600-700 megs. And you just think to yourself, why did I bother?
Yeah.
Sure, you could be prepped, but I think, the other side of it is obviously DLC. It's not so bad. If you're downloading a digital game, it's not so bad because you can still play other things, but it's that gate that stops you when you fire it up, because once you fire it up and it says, oh, you need to install patch 1.04, you're then stuck. You can't do anything with your machine. You have to just go away and leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me is a mega problem.
How much of it do you think is the game developer as well? Because you could say the same thing about some of those features being implemented by the game or maybe they can, or maybe they can't. I guess. I was thinking specifically, it would be nice to have like having something come through on every game where it says, "Hey, the latest DLC is now available," or we have a patch coming tomorrow.
Well, to be fair to developers, they do generally run patch notes. The problem is they do it on their own websites, which if you're not part of, say, take for example, if you're not part of the Bethesda community of gamers and you're not that enthusiastic about talking to Bethesda games, you may still love playing Bethesda games, but don't want to get involved with that community. So unless you read their their community updates, you may never see that patch. Sony certainly do whenever they have major first-party AAA titles that get a patch, say like PlayStation All-Stars or, more recently God of War Ascension. Whenever there's a patch with major changing features, they will put a post up on their blogs within their local regions, and the same with the firmware. But when it comes to, other games, third-party games, they don't tend to be able to put their patch notes on a wider scale, short of just tweeting it.
Yeah.
And and again, unless you're really into that developer and that publisher,
who does that?
You're not necessarily going to be following it. So I think
I meant more in the bigger picture, like Back to the Future by Telltale. When those were coming out, they were due out like every month or something like that. They were not on time. There's been several games that I've had where they've had promises of extra content and stuff that either never came or came very late. Even when we had the time where the PlayStation Network was down for quite a long time, that came back, and it was still like it interrupted a lot of that flow. It's like, well, where is that content, and what's going on? It would be nice if those kind of offers and everything, you had the ability to control those. Like, what's new on the PlayStation Plus? Send me updates. Don't make me go into the store and find them. Have it say, you're playing this. That's an RPG. That's similar to this game that's free on the PlayStation Plus this week.
But you do get that on the PlayStation Store. It's just that you have to go into the PlayStation. I don't think too many people use the What's New application on Cross Media Bar, and that tends to tell you a lot of stuff. Although it's generic, it'll tell you basically what Sony wants to tell you.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. It's generic. It doesn't relate directly to me, and then I got to sit there and watch it, which is kind of indicative of, like, I could go in the store and check the feed, because you browse by that. You don't pay attention to that. You're focused on other things. You go into the game. You go into a chat. You're doing whatever. It shuts that off as soon as you do. I'm talking about, like, if I've purchased Back to the Future, the series, I want to know when 4 came out.
Because
send me a damn message.
You say that, and yet I know you're very much against some of the social features on PlayStation Network, but here's the thing, those social feeds, from my understanding, will incorporate stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, while you could be against it for certain reasons, there are actually other positive reasons that have an impact. And do exactly what you're saying. I mean, to be honest with you, I get emails from Sony every month anyway, telling me what, it's coming in my PlayStation Plus update, but I have to be honest, they're quite often late. So by the time I get an email, I've already downloaded everything.
Yeah,
that was on
it's already out.
Yeah, so I do wonder about that sometimes, and
Yeah, I get the same thing. I get stuff about sales. That's my favorite one. You got a sale on this week, and you get the email, and it's like,
the sale's ended. Yeah.
Sale ends tonight at midnight. It's got like 2 more hours on it. You're like, that's nice. Because people don't. It's that whole thing again that people don't check it right away. You don't. It's not a true, up to the minute type of relationship.
And it is worth pointing out that at least, certainly with PS3 and the Cross Media Bar system, you guys in America are pretty lucky, because you actually have the ticker going. The thing at the top of your top right-hand corner of your screen that actually displays text and scrolls across. In Europe, we only have that when Sony Europe decide to turn it on. And it's very rare that they do, unless it's something like get 3 months worth of PlayStation Plus for a normal year subscription. They may occasionally put that up on the ticker. I think the ticker system's pretty good. I'm so disappointed that Sony Europe haven't utilised it, and I hope they do something similar to that, where all regions utilise it in the PlayStation 4. And I think, while we're at it, we should also say that one of the big hopes I have for PlayStation 4 is we'll finally cross this regionalised BS, because that does really annoy me when it comes to things like applications and stuff. But I'm
not holding real high hopes for that. We'll see. I mean, there's still going to be some complicated stuff behind the scenes on that when you think about it, with ratings and prices.
Yeah, but the thing is when it comes to ratings, the publishers, developers are usually responsible for that, and they have some foresight. The problem is things like Q&A. A lot of developers don't realise that, say, for example, the Q&A process in Europe is longer than America. You can submit a game and have it on the store within 3 days in the US. Yeah. But here in Europe, if you submit it with 3 days' notice, it'll be instantly refused, and you'll end up having to go through several weeks of intensive Q&A before it's even out. And there's certain games, even to this day, that are still behind. What was it? The recent game called Terraria or something like that. They sort of highlighted the problem that there was oversight on their part, because they submitted it to Sony Europe expecting it to be approved for 3 days, and it didn't. They sent it back and said resubmit it and we'll go through the normal process. So that could mean that we don't get it for another 2.5 months. So they do need to stream that a little bit more. So, that's some aspects in terms of applications. But we also wanted to talk about some of the interesting things that came out of GDC, and some of the other things that we should bear in mind that are currently available on PS3 and whether we'll actually see them on PS4. Obviously, the biggest one really is PlayStation Home, because we've heard absolutely nothing about that.
Yep, that's true.
We know that obviously PlayStation Home on PS3 it is a money maker for Sony.
Yeah, and I pointed out, what made me think about this is all the little mini transactions has really made me think about PS Home recently, and they do a ton of traffic on there. People buying just a little dollar thing here, dollar thing there, and
there are some great. I will say this: it's not just Sony that do that. There are a lot of companies that have actually spawned as a result of creating specifically digital content for home. You look at people like Lockwood Publishing who are doing fantastic things with regards to the content they offer on PlayStation Home, which is really interesting. But with it being a money maker, are we actually going to even see it on PS4? Because it is also important to point out that PlayStation Home has been going for what now?
Yeah, it's been in beta.
4 years, and it's still in beta.
4 years.
Yeah. And Sony's logic for that was always
5 years.
Yeah. So Sony's logic for it being in beta was that we don't want to say it's alpha, because if it does, it means it's finished and we can't improve on it, short of just patching things. But how does that logic now apply to PS4? Are we going to bring PS Home to PS4? Are we going to have some sort of integration with that, or is effectively PS Home going to be shut down, or just remain a PS3 thing until PS3 runs out of its life cycle?
Well, I don't know, but again, going back to the technology, it sure leaves a lot more things that they can do. There's a lot more, my creative mind's already running, thinking about the things you could do.
Yeah, because we talked about this a little bit before it came on air, in regards to, the new camera that's being implemented with PS4. We're talking about a top-of-the-range camera which has, 2 HD cameras in it, and it does 60 Hz refresh rate, blah, blah, blah. Supports AR play and 3D spaced gameplay, and we've heard Sony talk a lot, especially at GDC recently, about the possibility of voice controls, facial recognition to activate your console being switched on. Those are all plausible things, but then while it's great and they are cool little niche things, because I wouldn't say there's something that everybody would necessarily endorse, as we've seen with it doesn't always work out, as Microsoft have found out with Kinect. It got me thinking more about how something like the camera could, improve upon applications. So, like, take, for example, as we mentioned, PlayStation Home. If PlayStation Home is going to come to PS4, what could we do with that camera that would just blow people's minds and get them spending more time and money in PlayStation Home?
Yeah.
Can you think of any ideas that you'd want to see from it?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is you're creating your avatar in there.
Facial recognition. You could
take your picture, kind of 3D of your face, and putting you specifically into Home, and vice versa. Bringing, you could do real world content, your room, invite people back to your apartment or whatever, but instead of you seeing the apartment, you're seeing a virtual representation of your house that you've panned with your camera or something, and
I think that would be pretty good.
There's a lot of things like that.
I'd love to see Home from a first person perspective. Say you see a photorealistic avatar of somebody else, but you see it through a first person view, whereas and the same for the other person that you're communicating with. They see your photorealistic avatar and stuff, and you could probably do a lot more with it, especially in terms of things like AR Play as well, where you can actually use, say, the PlayStation Move controller, um, to actually interact with virtual objects within the home space as opposed to just pressing X on your thing. That's the interesting thing as well with the DualShock 4, because the DualShock 4 has a light bar in there, so you wouldn't necessarily need a PlayStation Move controller to be able to do that.
Right. Huh.
Which could certainly be interesting. I mean, for example, you want to hook up with your mates in a virtual space, you could all sit and watch a movie on your virtual TV within there, and all look at it through a first-person view. But say, for example, you've got your PS4 DualShock controller in your hand, and so when you sit down to do it, you could cycle through objects that you want the controller to display. So, for example, if you wanted it to look like a TV remote, you could do that, and then other people within your space who are looking through a first-person point of view would actually see the object you're interacting with in real time. So if you're sat in your living room with your controller, what they're actually seeing is your virtual avatar using a virtual remote control to be able to control what's on the TV.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I don't know, that kind of, do you ever remember a thing called Second Life?
Yes.
A PC sort of social
kind
thing,
of blew up into a lot of people actually doing a lot of real life things on there, concerts and everything, and
and I think while we may laugh at some of the sad and stories that go on with that, I think the potential of the PS4 to do stuff, especially with the camera system, takes that to a whole another level. But I put this question to you: if that was really the case with the PlayStation 4 home system, like I've just described now, do you think that would worry you a little bit about getting too into it?
Well, I go back to some of the personal stuff. Again, do I want to invite people in? See, my big thing is like, losing functionality because I choose not to share. Like okay, let's say PS4 comes out and it has home and it has that, and well, you can't play unless we see what you actually look like, or we can't let you play unless we let you turn the camera on, which is looking into your room, and those kind of things just. It leads to that whole personal thing again with, are you accepting of social media and you want everything out there? Do you want your details out there? Do you want to have to use your real name to be able to access those features? And those are the kind of things that, until you see them implemented, I got to say they're a little bit scary. I'm very protective. I'm protective of my kids. I'm protective of my identity for many reasons. And I'm not, just some paranoid schmo. For those of you that don't know, I have a history in law enforcement. I have been promised by several people that I will be killed by them. And, not small things, not talking small-time criminals, talking, your serious career criminals saying that. I've got to think about that. In some way, shape, or form, I've got to protect myself, protect my kids, protect my identity.
We've had this discussion before about, a majority of what we've seen in regards to the PlayStation 4 UI is that you can turn these things off.
Mm-hmm.
I've had that discussion with you, but to be honest with you, with something like PlayStation Home, I can't imagine that they would mandate it so that you would have to use a camera to do stuff and that you have to display your real name to do stuff. Sony are not daft, and in giving people the option to turn it off. So ignoring that for just a moment, the social media implications and the giving out too much information. I guess the point I was trying to make is, if you're able to create a almost photorealistic version of PlayStation Home where the interaction feels so real, do you feel that you would worry, ignore the social media for a second, do you feel that you would worry about getting sucked too much into the virtual world thing?
Nah.
You don't?
Uh-uh.
See, I would have there. I have some reservations. I don't think, I think it'd be really cool to be able to do it all. But I think when you start putting real integration in it, because at the moment the way that you access PlayStation Home is that you have to press buttons. There's a barrier. You press the buttons to do certain things. You have to navigate menus and stuff. You take that barrier away, and then you start doing those physical things through gesture movement, through the light bar on the DualShock 4 pad, and doing that in a photorealistic way. I think that there could potentially be some kind of addiction in the ability to not distinguish that you're actually looking into a TV screen, if that makes sense. You get involved with it too much, and that worries me a little bit, because as we've seen from things like Second Life, that even with barriers, people are still very able to get addictive to those kinds of experiences.
Well, you're always going to have that. Regardless, you're going to have people that have things that they... here's the thing about addiction is it really relates to how it really disrupts your life. That's the real key to when something is addictive and destructive. You have to weigh it out against, if you're skipping work to finish a game, get a platinum, or those kind of things. You really got to ask yourself, is that too much? And for a lot of people, when it comes to entertainment, it's a little bit more okay than if you're doing like illicit drugs or something. So, this discussion of this, it really relates to, the kinds of things that people get into with gaming, and how does that play out once the PS4 implements things like this? Because I can't see a virtual world wrapping me up that much unless it's truly an awe-inspiring thing, which I don't think we're at that stage yet. I don't believe we're at that stage yet. So, are people going to be addicted? People are already addicted. People are addicted to PlayStation Home. I've seen them. I've seen people that are on there 18 hours a day for weeks at a time, and you're just like, what the heck? Yeah, PlayStation Home, I just love it that much. And we have it at all. We have it at all avenues. We have trophy collectors that are like that. We have, yeah. I stayed up all night playing Skyrim.
You're a Skyrim addict. But no, I just thought it'd be an interesting question to pose.
What's the longest you've ever played video games, Dante?
What, seriously?
Straight, seriously.
Probably about 36 hours on Final Fantasy X. But
see,
then I was a teenager. I mean, come on.
Well, see, I've got stories like that too.
I did.
Isn't that what we're talking about here? That's too much?
If I'm a teenager, didn't have a job as a teenager, and I was off school, then yeah, okay. But I do play long periods of time now. But I won't go into some of that for personal reasons. But I still maintain the fact that, even though I do play for long periods of time and I do get trophies and I have an excessive amount of them, at the same time, at any point, I find it very easy to recognise there's a barrier there that I can, shut things down and stop doing things whenever I want, and I quite often still do that. I think to myself, well, I've been playing for 3 or 4 hours now, I'll put it down, or if I've been playing for 8 hours, I just think, that's it for me. I need to take a break, go do some other stuff. And, if anything, one addiction that does help me out with that is coffee.
Well,
because I drink a lot of coffee on a daily basis, and I usually grab a cup every hour and a half, which obviously requires me to step away from the computer and everything else that I do. So it's like a reminder to go and have a break.
Well, I'm here to tell you that I would bet probably 95% of us, someone on the outside that's an addiction specialist, would look at 90 to 95% of the gamers and the people that site members, site staff, fellow gamers, they would look at that and say, that's too much. Because, I mean, right now, legitimately, they recommend a couple hours of TV at most a night, and things like that. And those are, beyond that, it's considered too much. And it's considered it can be an addiction, and it's considered that it can be harmful to you and bad for your eyes and all these other things. And I've got
Yeah,
the
but
same stories, 36, 40 hours playing, I've
yeah, but
done it.
there's also contrasting reports to say it's the other. See, part of the reason I brought this up
I'm just saying
originally.
addiction's already there. It's a part of gaming.
Yeah,
It's not going to suddenly come where people are going to be like zombies sitting in front of PlayStation Home because it's more virtual and going, "Oh, this
well,
is so
see,
addicting."
this is why I brought it up, because, as I say, in some respects you've got contrasting reports. Some people say it's good to play games, X amount of hours and so on, and others say that it's bad to play games and stuff. But that's gaming in its current state. One of the concerns with things like virtual reality and headsets and all that kind of jazz is that it's hard for them to sort of do the tests on it, because things like virtual reality aren't widely available on a consumer level where they're able to expand the test group to numerous ages. One of the concerns they have with things like virtual reality, which is why not too much money's whacked into the whole development and research of it, is that the ability to distinguish reality from the ability to distinguish between two different realities. And as gamers, we have to accept that part of that is going to, part of the VR systems and stuff is going to be part of it, essentially going to be technology derived from gaming and so on like that. And, if we're getting to the point of, yes, you don't necessarily stick a headset on, but you're still staring into your TV, into essentially a real virtual world, how do you distinguish the difference? So, I wonder if PlayStation Home does come to PS4 with this photorealistic things and all these wonderful things that you can do with the camera and stuff, I wonder if Sony's looking into that a bit further about the potential implications that could have, with really drawing people into it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess is what I'm, the point I was trying to make is, because yes, there are addictions within gaming. I don't think any serious gaming industry enthusiast would acknowledge that there isn't. I mean, you just have to look at South Korea as a prime example of that, of where gaming addiction's a huge issue. But at the same time, that's not as huge as it is. It's still a minority, but you put something like a photorealistic PlayStation Home, and it could become a majority.
Well, I think it would probably turn it into a larger social thing. Picture Facebook with, virtual realistic face avatars, and picture how that could explode. People meeting people and making new friends, and because then it's that visual representation you're going to feel like you're closer to the person, because it's like anything else. If you ever had a long distance relationship, you realize, like, back in the day it was like writing letters and you lost touch with a person. Then you got the talking on the phone. It might last a little bit longer, but you lose touch with the person. But then when you're doing the face to face, and like what they say now, like, people in the military that are away from their spouse for the longest time, they try to do Skype stuff. They try to do things where they visually can see them, because then it's like being there. You can actually see your kids before they go to bed at night, and those kind of things. And those keep relationships strong the more and more you have that kind of connection. So I would certainly say if they put that in the PS4 home, that could be.
I think there are some positive aspects,
very
like
serious
you say,
positives.
yeah.
But at the other end, one thing we're not mentioning here is that my kids, I really look at, like, the PS3. I've used it as a learning tool, and I'll lose some of that with losing the text and stuff. And the reason why is because my children have advanced in their reading, because, like, I'll have my youngest ones, if they want to play a game or something like that, they've got to figure out what the menus and stuff say and all that other stuff. So there's a lot to be said about that as well, as well as playing some of the games I know it sounds weird, but like Madden and things like that, having a representation of things, the X and O's kind of on the board and the concepts with screen passes and everything helps with his, with his football play and American football, okay,
Yeah.
real football.
The wrong football.
These are the kind of things that, like, there's other elements in there in terms of that, and even, it opens up applications for learning as well. Picture, some of the stuff that they were doing with having guitars hooked directly in and having an instructor teaching you how to play. Imagine that instead of reading something on the screen, now you have a virtual instructor sitting there in front of you. This is how your golf swing should look. This is how your tennis racket stroke should look.
Yeah, but I think that's pretty cool if they did stuff like that.
No, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it opens that up, and I wonder if they realize that.
Where I draw the line with it is something like Connect, for example, where if you're playing a game of, for your interpretation, if you're playing a game of soccer and you misplace a pass or you miss an open goal and you start swearing at the telly, as you do, because football is a very emotional sport, and it's not like you're doing it to be offensive, but words will come out and it tells you've got a yellow card for being offensive. That to me is unnecessarily drawing me into the game, because I'll be like, then why the bleep 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 are you giving me a yellow card? And I don't want games to punish me for getting emotional about them.
Yeah. Well,
I think, when we talk about the microphones and the camera and stuff and the voice recognition, I kind of draw the line at that, being punished for saying or doing certain things because the camera's monitoring me when I'm doing it.
Yeah, and certain things, one thing about gaming is it's always been a hands-on, thing for me. I've never, I've done some games with the motion control and stuff like that where you're steering with moving the controller and all that. If they start taking controllers away and doing that kind of stuff a little bit too much, then that also make me uncomfortable as a gamer that's used to having something in my hand. Because you go all the way back to...
I've said that about Kinect for years, though. Because,
and the thing about Kinect, they've... It's not perfected, and it's not, some of the games and stuff with it, they haven't been very creative. They really haven't.
Even if the system was perfected, here's my concern with it, and it still stands to this day, is that take the PlayStation Move controller, for example. It's a controller that you point at a camera, you still have something in your hand. There's a barrier there, right?
Uh-huh.
So you can't access it without having the controller in your hand, so that when you do want to stop doing something, you take the controller off and you can't do it anymore. So with Kinect, obviously it's not the case. So for example, if you're playing a fighting game, right, using the Kinect system, you learn all kinds of weird and wonderful fighting moves and so on like that, but you have no barrier. You know what I mean? You can't just go, I've had enough of this, I'll switch the controller off. Things like muscle memory and subconscious then come into mind. So you may have spent 10 hours playing a fighting game using nothing but your own physical body. You then go outside and someone touches you, I don't know, on the shoulder, you're not expecting it. After sitting there and subjecting yourself to 10 hours of fighting, you may just subconsciously hit somebody. Because you've not stepped away. Do you see what I mean? You're still very much in the same, because you're just using your body. There's no controller to take that away from you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's not a barrier. Do you see what I mean? So it's still implanted in your head that it's okay to do that.
Well, I don't know about you, but I try to get involved in my games. I try to block everything out. I try to put myself into that. And having a controller, I figured about the controller in my hands anyway. A lot of games anyway.
Yeah, but what I'm saying to you is you can put the controller down now. So even if you find yourself getting too involved in something, you can put the controller down. You can say, this is not okay with me, I'm getting too involved with it, I need to take a break. And you recognise that you've taken a break because you've put the controller down. But with a Kinect system, where do you realise that you're stepping away from the game? You don't, because essentially there's no controller. There's no barrier.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So, that's something that's always worried me about the Kinect aspect of technology. And, I'm kind of glad that even though the PS4 has a new camera, which, let's be honest, it needed a new camera because the one on PS3 is terrible, they still have adopted very much the PlayStation Move controller system or the new DualShock system with the built-in light bar, so that you can still do the AR stuff. So there still is that immersion and the ability to get involved, but at the end of the day, you'll still put a controller down and you'll still have that barrier. There'll be no psychological impact as a result of not having a barrier.
I don't know. I worry more about the social aspect. I really do. I'd really hate to have, my kids want to play on PlayStation Home, and they've got their appearance up there, and then they've got maybe their real name displayed, and then they're an easy find on Facebook, which then is an easy find of where they actually live, what city they live in. Then you all you basically have to do is do some, simple searching from there, and then, when you, I don't know, it's like having a camera pointed at you all the time. Does that bother you? Go back to, what was the game? Burnout Paradise. One of the trophies involved it snapping a picture when you lost a race or something like that, and it didn't exactly,
smash, yeah.
It's like, when is that going to happen? It's going to take a picture inside your room.
But I think that made an interesting gameplay dynamic to it.
Well, it did, but it also led to, like, what if I've got something else going on in this room,
Then don't plug your camera.
I'm sitting there with my carving up a dead body with a joint in my hand, no.
Yeah. But don't plug your camera in. I think that's an important thing.
Well, you can't get the trophy unless you do. But that prompted me to, like,
Yeah, but is a trophy really that important if your social awareness is more of a priority to you? Is a trophy really that important in comparison?
Yeah, but I mean, controls could be, is what I'm saying. But now take it to the next level. You can't do a lot of things unless you share that information. That's what I'm worried about.
But
they still leave some anonymity in there. Maybe not to the standpoint of, if you're a girl avatar in PS4 Home. Now maybe that would be nice if you couldn't do that, but
I do just want to point something out here, which is, and this may not be something you thought of in terms of social media aspect, but, in terms of gamers, for example, you think there's probably about a couple of 100 million current generation consoles out on the market in total, when you bundle them all together, and I'm talking about, 3DS, Wii U, 360, PS3, and the Wii and stuff. There's a couple of 100 million of those out and about, but there's over 1 billion people using Facebook, right? If you're a gamer and you don't have Facebook, it's not even an issue for you. If you're a gamer and you have Facebook, what difference is it gonna make? Because the chances are you probably were already on Facebook before you even, bought a PS3. And on top of all that, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess the point I'm trying to make is if someone was going to attack you through numerous different ways through social media, I wouldn't imagine that stems from gaming themselves. I wouldn't have thought the attacker would have gone, right, I'm going to buy a PS3 so I can find out all these people's information and then go and attack them on social networks, because, they could just do that without a games console.
Yeah, true, but the more you put information out there, understand that it's going to be not only on the PS4, but it's also going to be likely right there on the internet. That's all I'm saying. Don't think that you have your details and stuff of your account out there, that that's not going to be something that's also going to be accessible through the internet, because it's all the internet. The PS4, even though it's its own system and you need a PS4 and stuff to access that right now, you need a PC to access an account and everything like that. That doesn't mean that those details are still not populating out there. You link it to Facebook, and the PS4 comes out, you link it to Facebook, and then it's, Kryptonite Dragon is Brian so-and-so, and, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
but the thing is, if people want your information, they'll track it down regardless. I don't think. I guess what I'm saying is, does it matter if you put your information
Well,
into a
I'm not
games
going to make it easy
console
for
because
anyone. You understand, like, for example, law enforcement, I'm able to put a different address than my actual home address on my driver's license. I am able to be removed from a lot of those, search engines to find people. I can actually, request and they have to remove my details. All those kind of things. And, I'm not saying I don't know where to find people, because I do. I know some ways around things. I know some specific things, that I can find anyone.
well, that's kind of my point I'm
But
making, which is that if you want to find someone, there's always another way. And I don't think, putting certain information like, okay, let's say you have to put your real name above your PSN ID. I would imagine you don't have to put your entire real name. I imagine you could just put your first name, for example. I can't see the concerns regarding that, because if someone wants to get at you via information technology, they will. It's as simple as that. And as I say, they don't. It's not a case of you making it easier for them, because a lot of the stuff that we do in this day and age is all on the internet anyway, from banking right through to paying the bills and stuff.
mm-hmm.
So it's just one of those things. But at the end of the day, should it affect the way that you interact with other people? No, it shouldn't really.
Well, okay.
And when you start,
I'm gonna take it
getting
to a
too
different
worried
level
about,
then. I'll take it to a different level then. What if it's not even that? What if it's the people and some of the harm that can come from that? For example, right now that Facebook, these social media places, people are getting arrested as a result of things that they put on there. I won't go into detail, but you can track people down that have images of things they're not supposed to be doing and find out where they're at. And you can get search warrants and stuff here in the United States for that kind of stuff and activity. You've got employers checking your history. Okay, so now I look at you, and maybe you're going for some white-collar job, and I say, well, look at him. He plays the PS4 all the time. Look at his Facebook account. It shows that he's logged on. He's earned this, and this. Or my other favorite, you call off of work. You're feeling sick, but you stay at home and you play the PS3. Is that okay? I think it is. If you're sick and you can't go into work, you don't want to get anyone else sick, and you're coughing and you can't talk on the phone as, maybe your job requirement or whatever, but you can still play the PS3, certainly. Or you're feeling better later in the day and you're going to play the PS3. Your boss gets on there, he sees that. What is this? You're playing the PS3, you're homesick.
Yeah, I have to admit there are some flaws in the whole thing anyway.
I don't want you to think about it as just always safety. Don't think it's just safety. Don't think it's just that perspective. It's about sharing information. It's about personal
I think
stuff.
there are some flaws in it in terms of, for example, what you do on your social network should never ever have an impact in your employment or employment chances. That are, without going too much into it, governments and relevant unions and stuff need to stamp a lot of that crap out, because it's just wrong. But I can understand it from a law enforcement thing, because quite often, if you're stupid enough to do certain things via social media that you shouldn't do, or against the law, and you share them, then at the end of the day, if anything, if it leads to more arrests and takes those people away from what they shouldn't be doing, that's positive. For example, we have a lot of issues here in the UK where people have been arrested and incarcerated for spouting racist abuse on Twitter. Now, there's a difference between being racist as a joke and being racist as in abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, if they're stupid enough to put that and not keep that kind of thing to themselves, and rightly so, should they be punished? And I'm not saying people will question the freedom of speech aspect of it, and I can kind of understand that a little bit, but at the same time, there's freedom of speech, and then there's just downright stupidity inciting hatred. So,
well, here's the thing. There's varying levels of I guess you would say legal consequences based on the validity of your threat. And what I mean by that is, like, if I'm talking to you over the internet and I say I'm going to kill you and all that other stuff, there's not anything criminal there because it's like, I have no idea where you're at. I really don't know who you are. You know, I'm saying it over the internet. We could be separated by 1,000 miles. You know, it might only be a mile or something, but it could be 1,000 miles difference in, you know, those are the kind of things that's different than if, you know, you, Mike so-and-so, I know who you are, I know where you live, I live right around the corner, I'm coming over to, you know, F you up. That's a lot different. And it's the same thing with racial slurs and all the other stuff. People say that kind of stuff all the time, and it's okay. But at the same time, if you make a threat and you include that, it steps it up a little. You know, at least in the U.S., it becomes a hate crime, what's known as a hate crime. Even threats of violence with racial slurs or something like that becomes a hate crime, and can escalate to a felony very, very easily, which is a higher level of crime here in the United States, for those that don't know. But what that amounts to is the same kind of thing with that anonymity in there. You're protected a little bit more. You feel a little bit more safer, like, well, you have no idea who Kryptonite Dragon is, kiss my ass, you know? As opposed to, you know,
okay,
I've looked on your Facebook, now I'm going to hit your Facebook up, I'm going to send you emails, I'm going to put stuff on your wall, I'm going to make fake accounts.
Let me put this another way then. If that's the case, do you really want people that do those kinds of things to have anonymity? Do you know what I mean? Because I personally don't. I'd
Well,
rather,
if it means less access, yes. If it means more access is granted with that, then no. I mean, I don't want them to have other ways of doing that stuff. I don't want, you know, they get, you know, they have a problem with me, but now they can send PSN messages to all 5 of my children because they can find that very easily on Facebook. Oh, these are his kids. These are their PSN IDs and blah blah blah. You know, I mean, see what I'm saying there? It's a complicated mess at best.
I don't know. I think the implications in regards to this applying to PS4 is that, you know, I'd like to think that most gamers are fairly, you know, there will be occasions where people are competitive. There will be, you know, occasions where people will fight over just the most ridiculous things.
Yeah, I know. That already happens.
And there'll be hurtful stuff exchanged. But I think, you know, I can't see the ability to share more social information and stuff necessarily being a bad thing for PS4. You know, I've read quite a number of articles that, you know, have actually suggested that this may well cut out a lot of the crap, because there is this overlying fear that you can be caught out quite easily. And I kind of like that a little bit, because then it encourages people to focus on what we should be, which is really a community of gamers that get on and, you know, are able to appreciate the things that we enjoy. And, you know, that's in part that plays to a little bit of what Trophies on PSN is all about. It's all about the community in some respects. So, you know, I'm kind of okay with the social stuff for the time being. I can see the concerns about some of the things like the cameras and things like that, but to be honest with you, I'm more, it doesn't bother me, to be honest, because I'm more interested in about the application of the technology and what cool new things we can do. As I say, we've explored some possibilities, you know, as I said to you before, with the, you know, the DualShock 4 light bar system. You know, if you're playing Gran Turismo and the camera's tracking your head and you can have a picture-in-picture, you know, you could have someone else's video stream in the top corner of your screen, and while you're racing them live, and you're using the DualShock as an AR steering wheel.
That's the other thing, dude, is like having too much. You know, that's the other thing. If that's force-fed to you, like, imagine all your friends that you give them permission to share videos from time to time, and now it's like a video pops up in the corner, and then a video pops up in the corner, and you're like trying to play, and like you can't easily shut that off. Or you got to leave it off all the time because you don't want that to happen.
I imagine they'll make it easy for you, so you'll probably have some kind of pop-up, like people won't just be able to pop into your game and stuff. I mean, we've had this discussion before when we like talked about the PS4 in the first thing, and Sony have sort of emphasised that a bit more. It's not a case of if you want someone to help you or whatever, they can just jump into your game without any sort of just doing it on the fly. There'll be some kind of notification system that will say, like, for example, you're in a race with 3 of your buddies on Gran Turismo 6. Do you want to video live chat with them? Before the race starts. And to be honest with you, I kind of like that cool thing. One of my favourite games that had a similar kind of feature was obviously Zen Pinball. You had the ability to have 4 people on video chat, you could talk to via video while you were sort of taking your turn on the pinball table, and they could see what you were doing on the pinball table and see your score racking up. And, it made for some great fun game nights. And I'd like to see, from what Sony are talking about, there's a possibility that, that can be implemented in some new and interesting ways with the multiplayer side of it. So, as I say, because that camera has 2 cameras in it, you can have one camera focused on you, showing your grit and determination to beat somebody in a race, while the other camera is tracking the AR steering wheel and head tracking. And, that can make all the difference and add to a completely more immersive experience.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of thing's cool.
Social overload. I can feel it. I can feel it already.
And, applying that to other applications as well, if I'm listening to something on VidZone, for example, a music video, I can still talk to my buddy over video chat while doing that. And, say, check out this tune, and, play it, and they can listen to it over the camera, and, it could have real implications for the applications. I just want to make sure that, Sony do provide the applications for PS4 to actually to make use of them. Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because if the PS4 launches and you can do all this really cool stuff, but there's only, essentially 6 applications, what's the point?
Well, there's a lot of complex things, though, the way they have to all work together, and part of it's going to be derived from what the game publishers put into the games and stuff as well, because if they develop something where a person can butt in or do any of that stuff, I would think that that's outside of Sony's hands, but they would leave it open to that because you want some of that functionality to be available.
Yeah.
But I would hate to have somebody just butting in or having the social overload where it's like you're trying to game and all your friends are like, hey, let's chat, let's talk this, let's do that. It's like, dude, I just want a game right now, leave me alone. Or that whole thing about, like Call of Duty really bugs the shit out of me. You go into a Call of Duty match and I still have, there's not a, I got to mute everyone individually to keep, so I can still talk to my party and do that, It's like, oh.
Yeah, but now I imagine it'd be like the Xbox system where you can do that prior to going into the game, and you don't have that problem anymore.
And then back out of the game if you want to change it.
No, I wouldn't imagine you have to be honest. With the amount of RAM that's in there, you should be able to do a lot of the stuff that we've talked about on the fly.
Has to be applied right. Yeah, that's the key. What I'm saying.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to explain to you is that you're sort of saying, well, it may be up to developers and publishers, but here's the thing. It's not going to be up to developers and publishers because it's all built into the hardware itself and the main operating system. And what that means is that the developers and games publishers can focus on building the best possible game without having to worry about the resources for running multiple apps at the same time while playing your game, because Sony have already incorporated and allowed for that. They've taken those kind of concerns off the developers' hands.
Well, what if I don't have a camera but I only have a Bluetooth ear set?
Well, this was one of the other things that came out from GDC that has a wide implication, which is obviously every PS3 will be bundled with a headset.
Mm-hmm.
That will plug into your DualShock 4. Now, there's several implications about whether or not that'll drive the cost up. I wouldn't imagine it does drive the cost up that much.
Yeah, but those headsets are not very expensive.
Yeah, I was going to say I wouldn't imagine it drives the cost up that much. But
one I use, I paid like $20 for.
It does have implications in the fact that at least now, regardless of the social media, regardless of whether you want to show your real name or tweet things or Facebook things and live stream or upload your videos, it does mean that people on PS4 are certainly going to be a lot more vocal. Now, you could argue there's some good points. You could argue there's some bad points that if everybody's verbally abusing...
I'm going to recommend everyone set all their stuff up to tweet, Facebook, everything. Dante Zero.
Keep it coming. I love it.
We'll see. I'll make a damn gaming video every 15 seconds I'll send to you.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'll play Skyrim for like 36 hours. Is that what you said your limit is? 36. Yeah. 36 hours straight. Send you a video of all of it.
Just send me a video of every 15 minutes for 36 hours. It'd be no different. It wouldn't be any different than talking to Squill on Skype, because every 5 minutes he sends me a video link on for YouTube.
Skype's it's a good tool.
So,
Squill's a good fella.
Yeah. He often sends me funny things across there.
He's not on right now. He's not listening today, I don't think.
No, he's away in Ireland somewhere for a weekend.
Yeah, it's vacation time.
Of debauchery.
Drugs and booze, I think he said.
Yeah, something like that. Not that we're implying anything, of course.
Not implying. We're outright saying it. No, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, in regards to voice chat, I think the implications of that is that, if it gets people speaking more on PS3, PS4 and online gaming, I think that's going to be great. I think too many people are not vocal on there and should be. Having played MAG myself, one of the most frustrating things is if you're the commander of 128 people battalion, and you're the commander-in-chief that leads the battlefield, and you don't talk, how are you supposed to formulate a strategy?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Or time your strikes and stuff with other people. So, I don't know, it just annoys me when sometimes when you go and play a multiplayer game and people just don't talk to each other, especially if it's a strategic shooting game or, a squad-based game, and nobody talks to each other.
Yeah. Well, gamers often do their own thing, and
yeah, but then if you're doing your own thing,
you usually have a choice between everybody running around doing their own thing or everybody's boosting, which kind of takes the fun out too. So
yeah, but I mean, if you're doing your own thing, why are you buying a 4-person squad-based shooter? It just doesn't seem logic there. Do you know what I mean?
You still kill people virtually.
Yeah, but that's what Call of Duty's for, do you know what I mean? You can run around and do whatever you want on that, because it's not really a squad-based shooter, but, and that was a funny thing with, like, Ghost Recon, because a lot of people didn't use their headsets yet, everybody still worked together as a 4-person squad.
I let my kids play Call of Duty, but I don't let them talk. I don't let them have the volume up where they can hear people. Yeah. So
yeah, but that's understandable. Well, I guess what I'm saying to you is if you're of an adult age, so 18 and above, as it is in the UK, be social in terms of speaking to people vocally. Do you know what I mean? Because, as I say, nothing worse than you get a new game, you go on the multiplayer, and you can't talk to anybody, you can't talk to them about whether the game's good. And the worst thing is you can't relate to other players, and in certain occasions that's actually paid off. We did the Gran Turismo 5 community game night. I don't know if you remember that one, but we had members like Ion Storm, Ninja Sub, and we met this other guy called Stoner Siggy, who is now obviously a member of the site, and everybody loved being able to chat to people. Well, we wouldn't be able to do that if we didn't have voice chat. We would just be another person replying to someone's forum post. So, the implications of having a headset bundled in with every PS4 is going to be great. I really can't wait to sort of get more communicative with people vocally as well.
Cool.
Because I think text chat is too easy to misinterpret it, and especially especially when you've got those stupid censoring things.
Yeah, I don't know what they did. That's an epic fail there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Use a normal word and it's like censor. Like, what the hell did I say?
Yeah, I was talking to Warbear and I put in the word episode and it moderated the PIS. And I'm like, surely you can recognise I've typed the word episode. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for some reason it moderated it. It's just a very bizarre system with text chat, and anything that helps eradicate the text chat system, I'm all for.
Well, you can't moderate that when there's verbal voice chat. So.
Exactly. You just have to get your own bleep machine.
Hmm.
Bleep, bleep, bleep.
Bleepity bleep bleep.
Which in GTA Men's case would be going non-stop.
It's going to expose kids more to profanity and...
Yeah, but in all fairness though, KD, kids are exposed to profanity at a young age anyway.
I know, it's...
Whether that's parents or not, you can't really say, because you might have someone that's never been exposed, a kid that's never been exposed to a rude word in their entire life, and then they go into the first day of school and they come out cussing like crazy. It's just one of those things, but, best not to worry about.
Mm-mm-mm.
As long as they ain't using it you and using it inappropriately.
Yeah, these kids have all these little shortened words now that they say stuff to... They know what each other mean. OMFG.
Charlie Uniform November Tango. I love that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was, as I say, overall, when we looked at PS4 before, we probably didn't go this in depth with some of the applications and implications of stuff that's going to be implemented. But I thought it was kind of nice to do it this time round, because we've got a bit more information out of GDC about, some of the things that Sony are going to implement.
What are you most excited about hearing some of the details? Cameron?
I'm just excited for the whole thing, to be honest. I can't put my finger on one particular feature because it just all sounds amazing. And I know that sounds kind of cliche and corny, but it really does.
I think I want things to work seamlessly, and I'm more concerned about that, really, than the technology at this point.
Yeah, but I mean, from my point, it's hard to sort of put my finger on what it is, because, there isn't one single thing that jumps out to me that would get me more excited than other things. I'm excited about potential applications, technology and game-wise, from the camera. The DualShock 4 looks meteor. It looks like it's going to be great. I have some concerns about the touchpad, but I'm sure they'll do great with it. UI looks great. All the background systems look great. The fact that it's going to have a faster Blu-ray drive, which means we'll get better games because we'll have more storage on Blu-ray discs. I think it can do dual layer 50 gig Blu-ray disc, which means you could get games on disc that could have storage up to 100 gig.
Yeah.
Which means there's going to be bigger games, bigger experiences, and as I say, the more I hear Sony talk about it, the more I really, really am getting on board with it, and I don't worry too much about the social media thing, because, Sony are doing everything in their power to reassure people that, these things are optional and can be switched off and set to your specifications.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I think is a great move on Sony's part for people like yourself who don't necessarily want to get involved with all that but still want to utilise the features. So, by giving you those options, it's definitely going to appeal to everyone.
Let's hope. So PS Home, staying? I'd say it's staying. There'll be a PS4 version.
I don't know. I think it's going.
I think it's staying. I think they'll make a PS4 version. They'll wait. It won't come out right away. I bet it'll come out probably a year after. It'll be PS4 home beta.
Well, here's my logical thinking with it. I think it will stay on PS3 for the next couple of years, and depending on how well PS4 sells out of the block will depend on whether or not it actually comes onto PS4. Because at that point, you're talking 9 years. If it stays on PS3 for another 2 years, you're talking 9 years of PlayStation 3. And I think they'll have to gauge at that point whether it's worth, building a home system. I imagine they've got some kind of prototype to run it on PS4 as it is at the moment. But I think they'll probably hold back to see what the impact of PS4 has on PS3, and whether or not, it's going to be worth doing financially. Because I think PS4, PS Homes, whether PS Home continues or not is going to be a matter of money, I think, which is a shame, really.
Well, it's got to be making money. It's all those little microtransactions.
No, obviously it does make money, but the question is it going to make enough money to warrant big budget development on PS4? Because people are going to want the next evolution of Home on PS4. They're not going to want Sony to port the PS3 version across to PS4 and it be exactly the same.
Well, if you make that the only version where you're sitting there with your friends able to watch TV and watch a Netflix movie and have them sit on the couch with you, then it's got some application there across the board. Know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you can pull a lot of other stuff together. I always thought the virtual shopping was a cool idea for linking that with real shopping. If I have my face on my avatar and its body structure is the same, maybe I put in my measurements, everything like that. I go into a store, I say, hey, that shirt looks really cool, and I try it on and it looks cool, and I say, okay, buy. And I not only buy my virtual version, but I have one sent to my address.
You know what would be really cool?
Charging my credit card, I buy a new shirt.
You know what would be really cool is if you could scan a real T-shirt into the camera and then use that in PlayStation Home. That would be pretty awesome. But again, as I say, it'll all depend on Sony's overall approach to applications in general. Are they going to get so lost in the social media aspect that they're not going to focus on producing applications like Home, or is it going to be a concern with them based on financial basis? And the question, it's one of those questions we can't answer now. But we'll have to come back and revisit this perhaps maybe around sort of May, June time when it gets closer to E3, and we see Sony leak more details, because Sony have been pretty open about the PS4. I mean, obviously they gave everyone they've been releasing details sort of on a monthly basis, so no doubt we may hear some more by the end of this month, and
let's hope.
We'll continue to report.
I'm looking forward to E3. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Microsoft seems unusually quiet.
No, I think silence says it all, really, to be honest with you.
Silence is what?
I think the silence says it all, really. Microsoft have an opportunity to take back some of the limelight, and they've done nothing, really. And to be honest with you, there's a bit of controversy in recent times because one of the studio heads at Microsoft turned out and said, well, so what if we do it on... basically tweeted out, I can't understand what the drama is about having an always online console. It's the way forward. And basically, he had an argument with another developer over Twitter, and basically said to people, well, if you don't have the internet, well, that just sucks, but does that mean we shouldn't have an always online console? No, it's not our fault, it's yours. Which didn't particularly go down well, especially as somebody officially reporting from Microsoft. So, I've got a funny feeling that they may actually just be doing an always online console, and if they are, it's not going to go down well. But I don't know. I'm sure it's not too dissimilar from the PS4 specs, if I'm honest.
I think
the difference will probably be just in the graphics processor and the memory itself, but and obviously the UI things. But to be honest with you, if I was Microsoft, I'd be pooing my pants a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you think PS3 was a year behind Xbox 360, and yet it's now equal in sales. Mm-hmm. And even though Microsoft had a year head start, now Sony are going to have the jump on Microsoft. What's going to happen this time? So.
Okay, well, it was lively discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how we don't see kind of on the same ground with the social. I think you're more excited about it than I am, clearly.
Yeah.
But
I'm just gonna have to like get a phone Facebook.
features are good though.
Beat over the head with it.
We all love really good features. Give us all kinds of features.
An
You can do it,
application.
Sony. Make them all work. Make them all work well. Make them work well together. Come up with some new stuff. Make it so you don't have to exit out of a damn game or a song or anything like that to do something else.
And do it fast. Don't
And make
trickle
it
it out on a
fast. Yes.
don't trickle it out on a 6-month basis. Oh, look, we'll release Netflix app, and then we'll do an Amazon app about 7 months later. Then we'll do a music app 7 months. You know, it needs to be regular and constant and quick. Not let's start putting apps on 4 years after we launch the console.
Indeed.
Cool
Alrighty.
beans.
Alrighty. Cool beans.
Picking up on the English sayings now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you good to learn some English.
Me? I speak English, you speak American English. Anyway, we should probably wrap it up for this week's show. I'd like to thank everybody for listening. I know it's obviously a little bit longer than we intended, but
Indeed.
Please get involved, share your thoughts. What sort of applications do you want to see on PS4 other than the ones we've talked about? Maybe there's something that may sound so far-fetched, but just put it in the comments anyway, because I'd be interested to see, how far people's imagination can run wild with the potential of
Maybe you come up with
applications.
something we can push forward if it's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I'm sure
exactly.
Sony's still open to what they can do with their technology.
Yeah, and I'd also like to hear people's comments about the implications. We've talked about the barrier between games and getting sucked into them, and addiction as well. So, do you think that those are real implications of the new hardware and stuff? And is that something you necessarily think about? So, share your thoughts on that too as well. I'll be definitely interested to hear whether it's not just me rambling on about the controller being the barrier and that other people have the same concerns, or if it is just me rambling on.
Cool.
That'll be cool.
Alrighty. You ready to do the tune to carry us out? The exit tune?
I can't even think of a song in my head to do. I don't know what.
Alright, fair enough. I'll let you out this time. Be better prepared next week.
Should we do Nick's favourite Gangnam Style?
Oh no, I'm overdosed on that. I'm really sick of hearing that.
You love it.
I don't know what it is with these freaking kids nowadays. That is just, it's like such a big deal, and I don't understand why. Let it go. It's time for that one to just die off and be forgotten about.
Yeah, well, maybe we should just end the show and then leave everybody to imagine, I don't know, there's something like the Harlem Shake tune playing in their head.
Okay. All right, thank you for joining us on Trophies on PSN's The PodStation, and we will catch you next week. Have a great day.
See you on the flip side.